Hey everyone, welcome. Today we are jumping right into a huge fundamental mystery. Think about it. How does the world out there, all the colors, the sounds, the smells, get in here inside our heads? How does physical stuff become our personal experience? Well, we're going to explore two totally different and really fascinating explanations for how that all happens. So, to make this real, let's start with something super simple. Imagine you're smelling a flower. Just picture it. What is actually going on in that moment? You've got the flower itself, and then you have the experience of its scent. How in the world does one become the other? It seems so simple on the surface, but the deeper you go, the wilder it gets. All right, so we're going to frame this explainer like a debate, a showdown between two big ideas about perception. In one corner, we have the established scientific view, the one from neuroscience. And in the other corner, we've got a model based on what's called the Vethathirian concept of subtle energy. Think of it as energy fields that are thought to exist just beyond what our current tools can usually measure. And this all leads to a massive question. Is your brain generating your reality, or is it receiving it? Okay, let's dive in. The core difference here is, well, it's huge. Neuroscience says the world is made of physical forces, right? Photons of light hitting your eye, sound waves hitting your eardrum. Your brain takes these raw physical signals and literally generates your experience from scratch. It builds it. But the Vethathirian model, it says the world is fundamentally made of vibratory energy and magnetism, and your brain acts more like a complex antenna or a radio, receiving and decoding an experience that already exists out there in a subtle form. So let's break this whole thing down, step by step. We're going to start right at the very beginning, that precise moment when a stimulus from the outside world, like the scent of that flower, makes contact with your body. How does that first handshake even happen? What's so interesting is that these split paths right from the get-go. Neuroscience is very direct. A photon hits a receptor in your eye, a scent molecule hits a receptor in your nose. It's a purely physical direct contact. But the Vethathirian model throws in this really cool intermediate step. It says the stimulus first interacts with your body's biomagnetic field, what some people might call an aura, before it even touches the physical organ. It suggests there's this subtle, energetic interaction happening first. In that subtle layer, it has a name, Tanmatras. In this model, you can think of Tanmatras as the pre-physical blueprints for our five senses. So the scent of that flower exists as this subtle vibratory template that gets activated in your energy field before the physical molecules are even processed by your nose. It's a really fascinating idea. Okay, so after that first contact, how does the signal get translated into a language the body can understand? Well, in neuroscience, your receptors do something called transduction. They convert that physical energy into electrochemical signals, basically little zaps of electricity that your nerves can read. The Vethathirian model has a totally different mechanism. That activated tanmatra is converted into biomagnetic vibrations that carry the information inward. So you see the split? One path is primarily electric, the other is magnetic. All right, so a raw signal has officially entered the system, either as electricity or magnetism. But here's the thing, that's not an experience. The smell of a rose isn't just a signal, it's a feeling, right? It might bring up a memory. So how does this raw data get transformed into a rich, meaningful experience? And this is another huge point where they just go in opposite directions. In neuroscience, that electrochemical signal zips up to the brain's main relay station, the thalamus, and then on to the sensory cortex. That's where it's first interpreted. Meaning is assigned inside the brain. But the Vethathirian model says, hold on a second. It suggests the biomagnetic vibration goes first to something called the genetic center, where it's instantly matched against stored memories and given meaning before the brain even gets the memo. The brain's role here is more about secondary interpretation. So you're probably asking, what on earth is this genetic center? Well, according to the model, you can think of it like a soul's hard drive. It's a subtle, non-physical center that acts as a storage unit for every single experience, memory, and even karmic imprint a person has, all stored as unique vibrations. It's basically the seat of your deep personality, influencing how you perceive everything from the ground up. And what about the emotions? You know that feeling you get from the smell of a rose? Neuroscience says that after the sensory cortex figures out what the smell is, the signal gets passed along to the limbic system, where parts like the amygdala add the emotional color. But in the Vethathirian model, the emotion is already baked in from the start. The vibration coming from the genetic center has a certain biomagnetic polarity. You could think of it as positive, negative, or neutral, based on all your past experiences with that smell. The feeling is part of the signal, not an out-on. Okay, so this leads us to the most crucial point, the biggest question of all. With all this processing going on, who is the one doing the experiencing? Where does the you who is smelling the flower actually live in these two models? This gets to the very heart of consciousness itself. And this really shows the massive philosophical divide. Mainstream neuroscience generally sees consciousness as an emergent property, meaning it's something that just sort of arises from the incredible complexity of all the brain's activity, but it's not a fundamental thing on its own. The Vethathirian model completely flips it on its head. It says consciousness is the fundamental field of the universe. It's the primordial force. The brain doesn't create consciousness. The brain is an instrument that consciousness uses to experience the world. And that changes everything. It shifts us from being a lonely organism in the universe to being a miniature universe ourselves, totally connected to the whole thing. Now, after laying out these two very different views, you might be thinking they are just completely incompatible. One is all material and electric, the other is all energetic and magnetic. But what if they aren't mutually exclusive? What if they're actually just describing the exact same event, but from different levels of reality? This quote right here offers a fascinating potential bridge. It suggests that the bioelectricity that neuroscience is so good at measuring and the biomagnetism the Vethathirian model talks about aren't two separate things. Maybe they're just two aspects of a single unified process, like two sides of the same wave. And what's really cool about this slide is how it frames that relationship. We know from basic physics that a flow of electricity creates a magnetic field, but it's also true that a changing magnetic field can create an electrical current. They're locked in this dance together. So maybe each model is just focused on one side of that equation. Neuroscience looks at the electrical current in the neurons and sees the magnetic field as just a secondary effect. And the Vethathirian model focuses on a primary biomagnetic flow and sees the electricity in the neurons as the secondary physical result of that flow. This slide does a brilliant job of showing how a unified model could actually work, like a cascade, a waterfall of creation. It could start at the very top, with the fundamental field of consciousness itself, that animates a being as life force. This life force might then manifest as a carrier wave of biomagnetism, which in turn induces the physical bioelectricity that our scientific instruments measure as neural signals. So you see, in this view, neuroscience isn't wrong. It's just starting its measurement at step 4 of a much, much deeper process. So, we're left with this one profound final question that really sums up this entire debate. Are we, at our core, biological machines with incredibly complex brains that construct our reality from scratch based on physical data? Or are we something more? Are we miniature universes with consciousness as our very essence, using our brains as sophisticated instruments to tune into a reality that is fundamentally energetic, vibratory, and already whole? The answer you lean towards, well, that shapes not just science, but your very understanding of who you are.